There we go.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. I'm Kerry Ford, and I'm co-hosting John McIntosh today in the Q&A, our seventh Q&A, and this one is entitled, What Happens After Surrender? So before we get started, I just want to say hello and let you know that this broadcast is going to be about 55 minutes long. And if you have questions as we go along, please feel free to put them in the comments section on the right-hand side of your screen. And I'll try to get to as many as possible. We have a lot of questions today about what happens after true surrender. And if you're watching this on a replay, you can certainly write to John, but the replays are available on this particular page of his site. All the videos are organized chronologically, so you can go back and watch the ones you missed if you want to. So I'm the moderator of this. I want to say that if you are watching a replay and you want to email John a question, you can certainly do so at this email address, globalpeaceweb@gmail.com. And if your question is chosen for a future broadcast, you will be invited to ask your question in person if you're so inclined, or I'll be happy to read it for you if you want me to. So just to briefly introduce myself, if you're not familiar, my name is Kerry Ford. I'm dialing in from Ojai, California. And I have had my own insights about the shift, the time that we're in between paradigms right now, which I have posted on this website, voiceofdivinefeminine.com. So you would be welcome to check that out and to reach out to me through that website. I'd love to know who you are and what's going on with you, make that connection. So if you're not familiar with John McIntosh, I'm just going to read a super quick bio. I do this every week so that you can have an idea of who he is. John McIntosh was a successful entrepreneur until 1999. He traveled for decades around the world, speaking to tens of thousands of people about personal development before leaving everything behind and diving into self-discovery, inquiry. John shares his acquired understanding of the false self-identity with his personal experience of thinking with the heart, which returns you to full consciousness of who you really are through his 27 books and his daily blog articles. So you can find some of John's books on the link that he just posted below. So what happens after true surrender? I'm going to bring John McIntosh on to say a few words before we get into the questions. Hi, John.
Hi. Let me first of all apologize for all this fuzz around my headphones. We use a green screen here to sort of emphasize the dream that we're in. I'm not really here. What's behind me is not really here. Nobody's really here, but we like to play with it anyway. They've just increased the quality, HD or whatever it is. I'm not technical at all. So the green screen doesn't work as well as it did before, but that's okay.
That's improvement for you.
It's definitely an improvement, right?
You can take me away and you can have the stage to yourself. I give you the stage, sir.
Well, you go ahead and ask that first question, which is really sets up the theme for what we're talking about.
Sounds good. Okay, the first question is from Sophie. Sophie says, I've a seeming theme that's been running through my life and I find it at times challenging. Since I was 17, I've moved house at least 30 times. I'm now 41. On occasions, it's been me feeling that a place isn't right or moving to be with someone, moving in with someone. On other occasions, I've been asked to leave by whomever I've lodged or rented with, or the place has been put up for sale. On one occasion, my stuff was put on the front lawn by a housemate. That's a year when the chaos was highlighted to extremes. Again, I'm in a position of having no home of my own currently, not earning enough to pay for anywhere. And this has been on and off for over 10 years. I came into this life with a significant level of conditioning, alcoholism, drugs, eating disorders for 20 years. And throughout these years have felt moderately surrendered to the flow of what life asks, me moving on and generally not fitting into the norm of society in any way. I wonder if this is surrendered or passive. And
Okay.
there's a second part to this question, which you asked me to mention in the first part. Do you
Right.
want me?
Right.
She says, I'm interested in how life unfolded for you when you made the sincere commitment to be free. Did things happen for you in front of you without you making decisions?
Okay. This question came in this week, and it's directly oriented to the concept of surrender, which is sort of the theme. We're kind of coming up with themes each week that we have. So I thought we would start with that. She's got a couple more questions as well, but we'll just start with this. And just going back to it, her question, I guess I'll just take. There we go. Which at the beginning was, is this surrender? Is what she's been doing, this back and forth life experience that she's been having, which clearly has been very, very difficult, as you can imagine, moving many times, being thrown out, having no place to live, having your belongings put on the front lawn, which I'm sure was a very difficult scenario, much more so than the way she was writing it. And just going through an enormous amount of what the false self would call suffering. She's asking, has her life up until now been passive, which is like capitulation, or giving in to, or is it true surrender? As long as one is involved in a merry-go-round of repeated scenarios, for example, having many relationships that are very similar, have a lot of similarities in them, then you're basically in a phase where you're not truly surrendering. You're giving up, you're giving in, you're capitulating, you're fed up, you don't know what to do, you feel powerless to change your life. You fade out of things. I can't take this anymore. You get fed up. But it's not like a line in the sand where you say, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to do something different. So that brings us to the second part of her question, which is asking about what I did. As I've mentioned several times, I was a very successful entrepreneur, very wealthy, multimillionaire up until 1999, and would have been far, far wealthy if I'd stayed on the track that I was on. I'd studied metaphysics, spirituality, quantum physics, supernatural phenomena, everything you can imagine spiritually oriented for 23 years prior to that, and thought that I had somehow integrated it into my life. I was basically trying to dance at two weddings. I was trying to make my physical life more comfortable using spirituality, which is what a lot of spiritual people in the world are doing right now. I came to a point where I basically had everything, and I was miserable, and I've said this many times. And so that line in the sand, that demarcation point came for me where I just could not take it anymore. I likely would have, had an accident and died. I would have gotten sick and died, or something would have happened, because I was so filled with sorrow while I had everything, and clearly getting more of the same was not going to change things because I had enough experience with having everything, meaning, choose anything and you can have it, that I knew it wasn't going to bring me what I now call joy, that I had been seeking since I started down what I then called the path, 1976, of spirituality. So I made the choice and I jumped off the cliff and I said, I'll do anything to be free. So this is what's called genuine surrender. I call it no matter what. I always use capital letters when I'm typing it. And so she's asking what happened after that. about decisions and so on. When you make this choice, I didn't know this at the time. It came to me very gradually. When you make this choice, you're moving out of the predetermined, predestined life that is sculpted for you by your conditioning prior to your birth. Every breath that you take, every move that you make. What is that Sting song? It sounds like that. Every single thing is planned ahead of time by your conditioning until you reach that line in the sand, you make the decision, you stick to it no matter what, which means that you're willing to physically die. That's not the real death. The real death is the death of the identity, the person, the body-mind identity, which is not real. But the false self, which is what we're talking about, thinks that it is real, that it's the self, that it's who you are. So you're willing to die, basically, or do anything to be free. You could say to be happy. Back then, I would have probably called it happiness. But I use the word freedom. So what happens then is life, and I was just talking to Anne about this, instead of taking a zigzag track to freedom, you're now flying as the crow flies. You're flying straight from where you are, which means not physically, but where you are consciously, to the awareness of the truth, which is that you are the self. You're God. You're I am. You're consciousness. And that means that the conditioning that created predestination is now dovetailing directly into the flow of your every moment. Everything is oriented in a way oriented to your total awakening or awareness to the freedom that you are. And when I say awakening, I don't mean that as freedom. That's just the intellectual awareness that things aren't the way we think they are. And there are many people that are awake in that regard. But that's not true awakening. True awakening, some people call it enlightenment. I call it freedom. You can call it love, unconditioned love. You are love. So your life changes in that everything that happens is now very specifically oriented to that full awareness of the self that you are. So in reality, you were never making decisions or choices on your own. You thought you were, but they were part of the predetermined or predestined life that you had. The inspiration you had to build a company was not yours. The action of doing it was not yours. It was part of the conditioning that created the predestiny in the life where you were basically sleeping to who you really are. But when you are awakening quickly to the freedom that you are, totally awareness of who you really are, so that you are seamlessly, totally, always aware of the self as I am, then everything is sculpted towards that, you could say, happening. It's not really a happening, it's an awareness. So you're not making decisions either because you have given up all possibility of decisions. You thought you were making decisions before, you weren't. Now you have the opportunity to make choices, but you've only made one choice, and that is the choice to be free. There are no other choices. That's the only one. That's the only purpose that anyone has while they're in a physical body, is to be free. And everything that happens is oriented that way, except now it has become a conscious choice. So that's what happened for me. And I can tell you that my life got incredibly difficult from that moment on, January 5th, 1999. Got incredibly difficult. Within about 2.5 years, whatever wealth I still had left was totally gone. And I mean totally gone. I had nothing. And I'd lost everything. I thought I'd lost everything. In reality, I was becoming empty, because you can't fill something until it's empty. You can't fill the container of awareness with the truth until there's nothing else there. And this brought me into contact with what I called a couple of Kali Mas. Kali Ma is the Hindu, and I don't speak about Eastern terminologies at all, only in this one respect because I went through it for 15 years. Kali Ma is the Hindu goddess of ego slaying. It's the ego killer. I don't call it the ego, as most of you know, because I find that far too complicated, many meanings. I call it the false self. So it's the killer of who you're not. And I lived with these two individuals I live in Toronto now, where I'm from, where this body is from, but I lived in Florida for 9 years, and I lived in Norway for 7 years. And it was with these two individuals, and they were clear mirrors. The first one was very clear mirror for who I was not, which was very painful because I wasn't running anymore. I'd been a runner. Many people will distract, or they'll sedate, or they'll run. I was a runner. And then the next one, when I was sufficiently humbled and I'd lost everything, was a perfectly clear mirror, which some people will call a twin flame. There's no such thing as a twin flame because there is only one. But in the dream, there's definitely soulmates, twin flames, all that stuff. These are just ideas that are appearing on the screen within the dream. And so this dream twin flame was in my life, and it was a perfectly clear mirror. It's certainly not the roses and champagne that so many people talk about when they talk about twin flames. That's nonsense. It's an extremely difficult period because everything that you're not is in your face every moment. And so for 5 years, until I walked over the bridge to my freedom, 15 years after I'd left my wealth, I went through hell. But the hell that I was going through was what's called standing in the fire of who you are not. And if you stand there, if you stay there, then everything that is hiding, clouds that are hiding the sun, hiding the self, the conditioning, is burning away. And you become clearer and clearer. You see clearer and clearer. What that means is that you're becoming more and more aware of who you really are, because the blocks aren't there anymore. The slumbering false self, the slumbering God self, which is the self that's cloaked in conditioning, is now being uncloaked. It's being freed. It's being unveiled of the prison, of the garments, of the blinders that have kept it from the awareness of who it really is. And so that's what happens after surrender. That's what happened to me.
Wow. Thank you. I'm going to change the order of what I thought I was going to ask next and go straight to Judith, because she wants to know what you just talked about, but maybe you could elaborate. Do you believe we all have soulmates, partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, wife, husband in each lifetime? And then in her second part of her question is, do you think when two enlightened know who we really truly are, the self or God we are, two enlightened people meet in this lifetime, it can help them grow, evolve, and enjoy life even more? Although I know the self is perfect as it is, but we're having our human experience too. I feel that soulmate relationships can even bring more joy and harmony into our lives, even though as self, we are joy and love all the time, or most of the time.
Okay, that's a lot of questions, but we'll tie it together. Just getting back to what I said before, within the dream, there are many things that seem to be absolutely true. For example, karma and reincarnation is believed in by multitudes, billions of people around the world. And it's absolutely true within the dream. But the dream is not real. So is there such a thing as karma, which is basically conditioning? No. Does it manifest in the dream? Absolutely. Is there reincarnation? No. Does it manifest in the dream? Absolutely. The synthesis of it is, Course in Miracles says, nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. Actually, that's this is a big, long book, couple of thousand pages. That's the whole book. And all it means is, what can be threatened? Well, can the universe be threatened? Anything in the universe, can it be threatened? Does it have a beginning and an ending? Yes, it does. So it's not real. But it still seems to be happening. So we can talk about what's in the dream, and we can talk about what isn't in the dream. But the question is oriented basically to the dream, and I wanted to establish that first, because when I answer that there is no such thing as a soulmate or a twin flame, it's absolutely true in reality, but in the dream, it's absolutely true that it is real. It is happening, and this can be very frustrating for one that wants to know the how of things, and the false self always wants to know the how of things. It doesn't stay open to receiving truth without going through a mental analysis or a profiling of what seems to be happening. So in the dream, in this scenario that we're talking about, soulmates and twin flames, we develop what you might call soul families. There's no such thing as a soul either. There's only the self. There's no higher self, lower self, soul, or any of that sort of thing. There is only the self. But in the dream, there seems to be. So a soul family then would be, you could say, people which show up in various incarnations over and over again. And they, like taking a script in a play, you know, this time you play Hamlet, and this time you play King Lear, and then you're the jester, and then you're the tyrant. You play the same plays by the same names, but you play different parts of them. And so you show up as the mother, father, sister, brother, child, uncle, grandparents. You play every part. Best friend, worst enemy. All of these things are part of a soul family relationship. And these people, sometimes some of them are incarnated and some of them aren't. Remembering, again, this is a dream that's happening. And so can you get guidance? People say, oh, my guides are helping me. Well, no such thing. There are guides in the dream, but no such thing in reality. Only the self. But going over that scenario, yeah, I'm getting guidance from my guidance. And you know, my grandfather is with me from another lifetime. There's a big, long story about that. Books written on it. Is it true? No. Is it true in the dream? Yes. Can it be valuable? I believe that's part of the question. Can it happen that these scenarios are helpful? Absolutely. Referring to the Course in Miracles, again, not making it as anything special, but it talks about using the dream to dream yourself out of the dream. And that's basically what's happening. You're using whatever is at hand to dream yourself out of the dream. This is the long way home. Self-inquiry surrender is the direct route. It's lightning fast. Using any other method, as pristine and beautiful and sublime that these practices and disciplines are, every single one of them eventually ends up at self-inquiry surrender. It's the direct route home. They can all give you moments of peace and bliss, of samadhi, for hours, days, in some cases years. People are in samadhi. But when you come out of it, you're still in the dream. The objective, which when you're free, you don't have any objectives, there never were any. But let's say that there was, such as a life purpose, which is to be free, is to be free now. And whatever method you use, whatever you're drawn to, you are drawn to it because that's your destiny. Until you reach that line in the sand, as we were talking before, of frustration, where you can't take it anymore, and you say, I'll do anything to be free. And inevitably, it's going to bring you to either surrender or self-inquiry or both. In my case, it was surrender. So the answer is yes, within the dream, having these soul family, soul mate relationships in the dream can be very useful, but it's a long way home. It can also be a lot of fun. And that, of course, is a seductive way of keeping you in the dream. You know, I'm progressing, I'm growing, I'm getting better, I'm evolving. These kinds of statements you hear all the time. Is it true? It's true to the extent that eventually it'll bring you to the line in the sand where you can't take it anymore. You know, I've been at this for 40 years and I don't feel any different. I thought I was growing, but I'm still miserable, or I'm not happy, or I don't feel joyful, or it comes and it goes. These kinds of things. You reach that point where you say, this is not working. and then they'll try something else, maybe 50 other things, or they'll say, I'll do anything, which really is saying, I give up making any choices. You thought you were making choices, but you weren't. You, whoever you is, God, self, whatever, you tell me what to do. That's real surrender. And so then let's get back to that other part. When two enlightened people come together, can they enjoy life more? Well, what life is it that enlightened people are enjoying? If you're enlightened, which means you're free, self-realized, you're not living the life that false self lives. Your relationship to the world, your sweeties of activities and likes and dislikes and hopes and dreams and all of those, they're all gone. None of that is playing in the ballpark with you anymore. You're free. You're still. You're empty. You're nothing. And when something shows up, it shows up. But you don't require anything at all outside yourself, because you know you are the self and there is nothing but you. You don't require anything to be who you are. There isn't any way to make your life better by being with another enlightened person. I know a few, and it's sublime to be with them. Do I need them? No. Do they need me? No. Does it make my life better? No. My life is always beautiful, always. In the midst of the craziness that's going on in this dream world right now, I'm constantly in joy. It doesn't mean to say that if I stub my toe, I don't have pain and say, ow, or, damn it, or whatever, or worse. But I'm always in joy because I'm free. So two enlightened people don't find their life getting better. They just enjoy the moment, and then they shake it off and they let it go. If they never meet again, thank you very much. So no, the answer is unequivocally no. Your life, the life that you think is real, which is in the dream, is not in any way affected by two enlightened people coming together, because you're not living that life any longer. You're in the world, in the dream, but you're not of it. You're not participating in it. You have no needs other than, obviously the body needs food, clothing, and shelter. You have no desires. You have no expectations. You don't identify with anything. You're there. And in most cases, you're there as an example. Just simply radiating the light of peace, of joy, of freedom that you are. So hopefully that answers that question.
Well, it does. And I just wanted to dovetail on that question myself, is that you just mentioned your Kali Ma's, and the second one you referred to as a quote unquote twin flame, who helped you by forcing you, if you will, to stand in the fire of who you're not. So wouldn't that be a valuable relationship for someone who wants to understand, who has already drawn the line in the sand?
Yes.
Stand in the fire.
Absolutely. It was an enormous blessing, very, very difficult, enormous blessing. But let's just talk about the word forced me. It was my choice to stand in the fire of who I'm not. They showed up, that person showed up. They've got their own life, and so they showed up in their own life for their own growth, even though they are also me. But let's not get complicated. They showed up for their own purpose. But in my life, they showed up because she was the perfect, clear mirror for me to look at who I am not and not turn my head. Without going into details, maybe in some broadcast, I'll go into in depth of what actually happened, but not right now. So she had nothing whatever to do with what I was doing. What I was doing was just not turning my head, staying in the fire, looking at everything I'm not, and allowing it to burn away. And it was hellish. It was extremely difficult. Was she in any way bad, good, better, terrible, awful? Or no, she had nothing to do. It's just a mirror. And nothing to do with me standing in the fire. she was just part of the prop on the stage. I'm not in any way diminishing the incredible gratitude that I have for the experience. It's brought me to my freedom. But she had nothing to do with my freedom. She was just the exact perfect person, situation, reflection, kalima, in the moment for me to cross the bridge into my freedom. And so, yes, yeah, this can be unbelievably valuable when one is ready for it.
Yes, I think I misspoke. What you weren't forced by her. The fire of who you're not was there, and you chose to stay in it.
That's right.
So she was providing that opportunity for you, as painful as it was.
Yes.
So I think that might be valuable for anyone who feels
it's extremely valuable when they're ready. But they won't meet someone like that till they're ready. It's not possible. They would run away from it.
I think there's a lot of talk about twin flames right now, so I just wanted to offer that.
Absolutely, and there will be more, but most people run from it because they're not ready.
I can see why. Okay, so we're going to move on to Jeanette, who sent a meme, and she asked if you could please comment on this. So I will read what it says. It says, "There is no perfect life, no perfect job, no perfect childhood, no perfect marriage, and no perfect set of people who will always do what we expect them to do. What we have is a perfect God who is able to lead us through this imperfect life with unfailing strength, incomparable wisdom, and infinite love."
That sounds very cozy. And it also sounds very Christian. Nothing wrong with that. Absolutely fine if that's your predilection, or some other religious belief or belief system that sounds similar. Absolutely fine. You're always exactly where you're supposed to be. And there's no good or bad, no better or worse, none of that sort of thing. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. But let's first of all say that we don't have a God. We are God. And there isn't something outside of us leading us through the imperfect world. That's not happening. Your conditioning is taking you in a predestined format through a dream, which is created manifested out of the conditioning. Your world shows up precisely according to what you believe, who you believe you are. Your world is absolutely unique. There's one planet, 7 billion worlds. And each one is oriented specifically, exactly, not the slightest deviation from who you believe you are. And so there is no God that's leading you through it. Your conditioning is taking you through a dream, a maze of mirrors, if you like, all of which are giving the opportunity to look at yourself, and most of which you don't look at because you don't know that you're in a house of mirrors. You just think you're looking at the thing, oh, gee, I don't like that guy. Well, no, you don't like you in that moment. The person that shows up that you don't like. No, that's you that you're saying you don't like. Showed up as a gift to you, not looked at as a gift usually for many lifetimes until you figure out that they showed up for you. So no, there is no God outside you. You are God. You don't have God, because what you can have can be taken away from you. You are God, and you can't take away what you are. Anything that you have can be taken away from you. There is no you, and there is no having, but there seems to be in the dream.
So we're going to move on to Suraj, who asks, "Hi, John. I'd like some clarity on the process of self-inquiry. So a thought comes in, I'd like to write a song. Then I ask, who does this thought come to? And immediately my mind goes into a void, and there is a slight opening sensation in my chest. So the problem is, I don't know if I should stay in that void, that void indefinitely until another thought comes, and perform self-inquiry again, or do I go and write the song? I feel if I take every thought into the void that I would get nothing done in life." Much love.
Right. Okay. This is a really, really good question. Anything that has to do with being clear about what self-discovery is and how it works, so-called works, even in its incredible simplicity. Self-inquiry / surrender, I like to say, but for some people, it's specifically and only self-inquiry. And I'll just repeat what self-inquiry is first to make sure, because there'd be some people that haven't seen any of the other broadcasts or read what I've written. Self-inquiry is basically throwing light on who you are not. You're not the false self, the body, mind, identity. And when a scenario comes up, somebody treats you unkindly when you're buying something in a store, they're rude, and you respond or you don't respond, doesn't matter. You thought about it, gee, they were rude, or you acted on it, whatever. But in your mind, at least, before you say anything or don't say anything, you're saying, oh, God, that person's awfully rude. So the self-inquiry would go like this. It would be, who is it that feels that someone was rude to them? And then the answer always is, never deviating from, the answer always is me. And then the next question is, always is the same, who am I? You're not looking for just those three parts. You're not looking for an answer. What you're doing is you're handing over to grace, which is love in action, which is who you are, another name for it. You could say the reins of authority to turn on the searchlight and shine it on who you are not. And the false self is used to hiding in plain sight. It's not used to being exposed. So when you're asking, who is it that felt that they were being insulted or treated poorly, you are shining light on that imposter. And this process, I like to call it a pathless path, because the self doesn't ever go anywhere. This process or pathless path, when done regularly, and it could be hundreds of times a day, will dissolve, because this makes the false self retreat back into the place that it came from, which is the self. It makes it dissolve. It makes the clouds that hide the sun dissipate. Okay, so that's self-inquiry, and it's the direct route to freedom, and it'll bring anybody that follows it sincerely to their freedom in this lifetime. Absolutely, for certain. It's very, very simple, so a lot of people just dismiss it, but I assure you, it works. It's the only thing that does work, that and or surrender, ideally with surrender. So the question here has to do with thought, and should I, meaning this person, should I go into self-inquiry and ask, where did this thought to write a piece of music come from? Should I sit in this void and wait for another thought to come and then go back into self-inquiry? What should I do? Well, we can also say you're not the doer. The doer is the self. You're an instrument, but it's the self that is doing the doing. And if it's doing the doing through the filter of conditioning, then it seems like you are doing something. Your body is doing something, but you're not a body. You're not a mind. You're not a person. You think you're having a human experience, but you're having a sleeping, dreaming experience. There's no such thing as a human. I know that's pretty shocking, but it's true. There is only the self, nothing but the self. So how does one delineate the difference between, let's call it practicing self-inquiry, and not practicing self-inquiry? How do you know whether it's coming from the false self or whether what's coming to you is coming from the self? It's very simple. If there's anxiety, if there's fear, if there's trepidation, if there's a kind of exhilaration, or many other ifs connected to the idea of, in this case, writing a piece of music, I assume this is a musician. This is a thought that's coming from the mind, which means it's coming from the false self, and self-inquiry is appropriate if you feel for doing it. However, if there is a feeling, not a thought, but a feeling, and let's distinguish, emotions are the tools of the mind. Feelings is the instrument of the self. It's different. if there is a feeling of joy associated with this, let's call it an intuitive flash, I'd like to write some music, the feeling of writing music, then that's not a thought. It may seem like a thought, but after a while, you'll know the difference between a thought and a feeling when you do this regularly. If there's joy associated with it, okay, well, let's talk about joy. Happiness is what a lot of people say I want to have, but happiness is a roller coaster in the world of opposites, which is based on the belief in separation. And always on the other side of happiness is sorrow. I call it the pendulum swing from 1 to 59, from incredible, exquisite, sublime happiness to the worst kind of sorrow that you can imagine. They are symbiotic siblings. They are one. They're joined at the hip. You cannot have one without the other. But joy is a flat line that you can experience, as I am as I speak right now. And let's say that I had a sore finger. Let's say I banged my finger before the broadcast. I didn't, but let's say I did. I could be experiencing pain right now, but I'd still be in joy. You see? So joy is a flat line. It's always present. It's who you are. It's another name for love or peace or beauty or freedom or truth or the self. It's always present. And if that feeling of joy, it's a very soft feeling. It's never exhilarating. It's very soft and gentle, but incredibly powerful. Is present when this feeling of writing a piece of music or whatever came to you could be going out in the garden and weeding. You feel joyful about that. Then you know that it's coming from the self and you don't need to do self-inquiry. This is truly living. But if it's attendant with anything else, anxiety, fear, trepidation, exhilaration, fulfilling some sort of a dream, something that you have to do or that you've always wanted to do, then that's an idea and is coming from the false self, and self-inquiry is definitely appropriate if you feel for it. It has to be something that you feel for.
Catherine, who's on the broadcast right now, put a question in the comments. She wants to know, so once you are free, do you not come back to Earth?
Okay, that's a logical question. Let's call most people's lifetimes involuntary. The dream of reincarnation, which is real within the dream, but not real in reality, is repeated over and over and over again within the dream, a dream within a dream, over and over and over, as long as there is desire. The self does not have desire of any kind. It's complete. Why would it have desire? It is everything. So when one is free, they do not, in quotes, have to come back into a dream life, incarnation, reincarnation. That doesn't mean to say that they won't. There may be some purpose here or on some other dream planet, still a dream, where the light of truth can flow through them, through the body that they take on, in such a way that it is conducive to waking up that part of the self which is slumbering. So no, they don't have to come back, but they very, very well may. They can choose to come back. There is really no they then. It's the self choosing to come back.
I'm going to go to a question by Paul. He asks, does consciousness influence the dream world?
Okay. Consciousness or conscious awareness or pure conscious awareness is another word for the self, God, I am, many other names. Often you will hear that the universe, the world universe, and let's say your particular life experience, is a projection on the screen of consciousness. It sort of sounds like there's projection is one thing, there's a screen that's another thing, and the result is another thing. So that doesn't sound like oneness, but it really is the same one thing happening. the screen of consciousness has projected on it, through the illusion of separation, a dream universe and everything that appears within it. So, is consciousness creating this? No, consciousness is not creating this. Consciousness only creates that which is eternal, has no beginning or end. The false self, which comes about, false self, body, mind, identity, false self, comes about as a result of the conditioning, attachments, expectations, and identifications tied to memory, which is the past, and imagination, which is the future. The conditioning that comes about as a result of the belief in separation. So consciousness had an idea which was necessary in order to manifest the illusion of the universe. And that idea was separation. Getting back to what I was saying about thought, we're not talking about the same kind of idea that is associated with thought. I'm using the word because there isn't another word that we could use for it. So the idea of separation is what started the whole thing, started the entire universal dream. And it seems to be happening over a long period of time, but time is also an illusion. Actually, when you go into deep sleep, the universe disappears. There is no universe. And when you come back into awareness, which is dreaming awareness, the universe, the world, and your life pops back into manifestation as another dream. It's another dream. It's not the same dream. It just seems unbroken. Seems continuous, but it's another dream. It's based on memory and the conditioning that you still have. So consciousness is not creating or influencing the dream. Conditioning is. Consciousness came up with the tool, the instrument, which is the belief in separation, that allowed it to evolve, which is also a dream, into conditioning and personhood and the manifestation and the continuation of the dream. But it didn't create it.
Wow. Fascinating. I think you just answered this question, but the second question that Paul had is, does consciousness desire embodiment, ask to know itself in limitation?
Well, consciousness, another word is the absolute, is nothing. It's empty. You could call it infinite potential, but it's nothing. Jesus was quoted as saying, "I of myself am nothing." He was referring to the person that seemed to be, the body, Jesus, that seemed to be as nothing. The body, mind, identity is nothing. But also referring to the emptiness of the absolute, which is nothing. But it has the potential to manifest as all that is. The eye, I think I've mentioned this before, eyeball, cannot see itself. It can see virtually everything else, like, it can see its own eyelashes, but it can't see itself. The absolute cannot see itself. So in order for it to become aware of its infinite potential, it, you could say, needed or desired to manifest something that would make that happen. In the sense of need or desire, as the false self-identity knows it, this suggests something that has an emotion tied to it of, I got to have this. I really need this. I can't do without this. That's not the kind of need. We're just using words here, and words are not adequate to describe the emanations of the absolute, who you are. But we can call it a desire. It's not the kind of desire that you have. Oh, geez, I'd really like to have that new car that just came out. No. It's just simply, now we'll use the word wanting, to know itself. And so manifests, I should say, an environment through the belief in separation that manifests into a universe, world, your life, this planet, your life, and experiences itself through your life. and then all the other lives and all the other entities and all the other what some people call creations, manifestations throughout the universe. A stone, a snail, a breeze, a tree, a fish, any kind of experience is knowing itself in some way. So does it have a desire? Yes and no. It's a divine dichotomy. It does, but it doesn't. In the sense of the desire that the false self calls desire, absolutely no. And there's no way to explain what its desire was that even the word made it create this idea, make up this idea of separation. There's no way of knowing until you're there. And there's definitely no way of explaining it because you can't put a frame around infinity. You can try, but it's never adequate.
I'm going to squeeze in this last question by Marlena. John, what about synchronicities, seemingly unrelated events? Are they also scripted by self?
In truth, everything is synchronous. Because if everything is going to happen, that can happen as a result of a pre-designed authority based on your conditioning that you came in with, then obviously when you go from A to B, B to C, C to D, it has to be synchronous. Everything is synchronous because it's all part of this predestination. There is nothing which is not synchronous. There are, however, moments where conscious awareness, whether you're sleeping or whether you're free, in those moments that are, you could say, extraordinary and even unbelievable, that, oh my God, I can't believe I was just thinking of you and you rang on the phone. Everyone's had that experience, that sort of thing. Or, I saw your name appear in a book that I was reading the moment I thought of you, or on television, or you tweeted me, or whatever it is. Or it could be something, truly amazing as the false self sees it. Synchronous events that then you would say, if you believe in coincidence, you'd call coincidence, or you would call synchronous if you believe in synchronicity. But everything is synchronous. And that includes when you make the choice to be free, and now you're moving, flying as the crow flies, direct to freedom. Everything is synchronous then as well. It's just faster in the realm of time and space, which is an illusion, but it seems faster as you move very, very, seems like quickly towards, seems like time and space again, the freedom that you are, really the awareness of the freedom that you are.
Well, I think we've come to the end of today's Q&A. I want to remind people that they can email John with any questions or comments. He's going to pop up his, there it is, globalpeaceweb@gmail.com. So feel free to reach out with your questions and comments or suggestions, anything. And I guess we'll be here same time, same station next week, right, John?
At this moment, it seems that way. But also, let's just remind you that you can go to this webpage probably tomorrow, and you will find not just this broadcast chronologically placed there, but also the previous 6. And that's the easiest place for you to see them all in one location. So we encourage you to do that. I believe also you'll be able to find them on Facebook. There should be a replay happening there as well. And of course in YouTube, if that's the way that you're seeing it. So thank you, Anne, for being the mistress, the maestro, the hostess of our little ongoing Q&A. And thank you all, whoever showed up now or later, for showing up, and for those that shared their questions with us. We wish you joy and love.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye for now.